The emergence of COVID 19 has forced the legal industry to rapidly undergo a fundamental transformation. I'm Jack Newton, CEO and co founder of Clio, the world's leading cloud based legal software provider. In each episode of Daily Matters, we'll explore what this new normal means for law firms, how legal professionals can find success while working remotely, and how lawyers can best serve their clients during this unprecedented situation. We're joined today by Aaron Chauhan, founder of Tenant Law in Birmingham, UK. Aaron, thanks for joining us today.
Hey Jack, happy to be here. Thanks a lot for having me.
So Aaron, first of all, how are you and your family doing?
In a word, we're pretty good. I've got a wife and we've got two boys who are 11 and 7 at home, and they are seemingly having a lot of fun. There seems to be a lot of Lego battles and football, basketball in the garden, and movie nights. So yeah, in a strange way, we're doing pretty good, following the rules. How are you doing with it all?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We are based here in Vancouver, BC, where Clio has been mandatory work from home for almost a month now. We've gone through that adaptation, I think, pretty successfully, and we're all cloud-based with our tools and so on. So that made the transition a lot easier. But I've been very impressed with how the teams stepped up to navigating the distributed challenge, and really happy to see that. And everyone's healthy. I've got 3 kids, 11, 9, and 7-year-olds. So the house is busy, and we're trying to figure out the homeschooling with video conferencing to the kids' school while my wife and I both juggle full-time jobs. So that's been interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
I layered in doing a podcast just to make things extra interesting. But things are good. All things considered, as good a situation as I think I could hope to be in.
Yeah, I guess you see out of this time, this opportunity to do things you wouldn't have otherwise thought about. So I guess you're connecting with customers, people you maybe not spoke to, and that must be good fun for you.
That's just it. It's actually been a really, really positive change in terms of, as you mentioned, almost having permission to experiment and being able to try out new things. And the world changed overnight, and all of a sudden we have this ability to adapt to it in a set of new ways that we may not have ever felt like we could take the risk of trying those things in the previous world. So I should look at this as a huge opportunity and a really exciting, time period. And, obviously it's coupled with human tragedy and a human toll as well. But I think for us as a society, it's a great opportunity to find new ways of doing things and thinking about what learnings can we take out of this pandemic and apply to the way that we operate going forward in a way that is actually maybe more progressive and can we create a better world out of this crisis, which is, I think, a big opportunity. And maybe segueing into my first question around the crisis and your take on it, Aaron, is what's most on your mind right now? What are you thinking about the most?
I guess the word is really about stability. I think the strange thing about this is you'll get events that take place in different countries that can kind of shake industries, but to have something happen across the globe at the same time, where everyone is going through a similar issue of panic and concern, going right through from financial levels to health and people at home, it's just trying to find some stability in a time where there's a bit of panic. And I think from a home perspective, I'm very lucky. My wife's at home, and she's not working at the moment, so she's there to give some stability around the kids. And like you're saying, you've got the homeschooling, you've got the online lessons and stuff. And I think our kids are the same age, 11 and 7. But for work, we're a small firm. We've got 10 people, but each of those people and most of our team have young kids, and you want to give stability to them to make sure that they say, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together. Your kids are going to be okay.
Right.
People can be fed. First thing is people are thinking we're going to lose work or we're going to lose jobs. And I think it's just stability, just getting in England, we'll talk about soccer, football a lot. We'll say, get your foot on the ball and just control the game. And
Right.
that's kind of in my mind at the moment. Just keep control.
And maybe digging in a bit deeper there, can you just tell us, especially with the UK and Birmingham perspective, what kind of impacts has COVID-19 driven for you, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, it's strange. So I've got quite a bit of family down in London, and in London the impact was quicker than it was in Birmingham. We're 100 miles north of there, and we were finding that I guess people weren't taking it as seriously as quick as they should have done. And that included in business. People were still going out doing things and meeting. Let's meet in person rather than let's do a Zoom chat. So the first stage has been this kind of realization and that we all have to suddenly alter the way we're working. And personally, I've seen it. I think you mentioned it. I've seen it more of an opportunity. I mean, I would have been traveling a couple of times a week, and all that travel time's gone. I'm at home. This is about to come to the end of the fourth week of working solidly at home, and there's lots of opportunities, things I haven't done which I could do. So you're talking about experimenting. We're updating our website. There's more articles we haven't done. There's a white paper we're finishing off, and I think a lot of other people are seeing that now. This is a time to get on with things you haven't been doing,
Mm-hmm.
rather than sit here and worry too much.
Yeah. And how are you juggling this new world? You said you've been in it for, I think, close to 4 weeks. You've got your two kids. You're running a law firm. You're a solicitor. A husband and a teacher layered on top of all of that. How are you juggling all of that? And like all of us, it may be only partially successfully, but curious how you're managing that. How have you changed some of your day-to-day routines, and do you feel like you are successful in at least aspects of all of those challenges?
Yeah, I guess the starting point is sleep is overrated. Yeah, I mean,
Right. Yeah.
Right now it's there is a lot to juggle, as you say. I mentioned, I say, my wife's at home, so she is taking a lot of the slack with the kids, and I think it's been important for me because what I've tried to do is keep a routine of getting to my this little office and getting to my desk, and from just after 8, and I'll work my normal day, and I'll just try and keep a structure, and that's been really important because I think at home it feels like there's a bit of a structure. It's so easy to just step out and go and want to play or just watch TV or do something different. With the kids, we talk to them a lot. We tell their kids are curious, aren't they? They want to know what's happening. What's this virus? What does it mean? Why are we all at home? Why do you have to work so much? Because they don't see it every day.
Right.
And I think it's all about just keeping that routine and getting certainly at home. It's sometimes we take for granted all the work everyone else in the family might do, and I don't know about you, but I'm just seeing in business and at home, there's a huge amount more of empathy. You're just standing back and appreciating everyone for what they do, which you took for granted when you were going at 100 miles an hour. And now it is a slightly slower. You can see that. And that's, I think it's just having that type of thought, thinking, okay, look what others are doing. And then you step up a bit more yourself. And that's driven the discipline, I think.
Yeah, I think there's just a new approach to even interpersonal relationships at a business level that you see a little bit more empathy. I think you see people being a bit more human and a bit more real. It's refreshing, and again, hopefully something that lasts beyond the pandemic. But a phrase I've heard several people use is they're just trying to be more human, and it's seems like an appropriate concept, a powerful one in the climate we're in. Would love to set the foundation for the next part of our conversation, Aaron, just around tenant law and how you're navigating this crisis. Can you tell us a little bit about your firm and some of its history?
Yeah, of course. So I used to be a partner at a large national law firm, 400 partner firm, and I used to head up a commercial fraud team there. And I pretty much 4 years ago this month set up Tenet. I didn't expect it to be a firm. I was going off to do consultancy work. I went off and started to sign up for a postgrad in financial crime compliance. So my background is in dealing with financial crime compliance and investigations into fraud, helping people get money back, employee fraud,
Hmm.
bribery, investments, and work carried on just coming through the door. And what we found, we ended up growing into a little niche firm in this area. We've got there's 10 of us. We're all from national law firms, but the one thing that started to set us apart was, and which has been really useful in this crisis, is that 80% of the team always work from home.
Hmm.
We have an office space. Everyone work from home pretty much. And there's no targets, no financial targets, no billable hour targets, and no presenteeism. So it's work when you need to work around your family. Let's get the work done. Forget about all the measurables. Focus on being a lawyer. And that became a bit of a USP for us. And so we've ended up as this niche firm with advising around fraud, but kind of heavily focused on our people ahead of our product. And through luck, judgment, and whatever it is, recommendation, referral, we've managed to grow, and it's led to this business where we are probably about 25 to 50% less on our hourly headline rates than we would have been at the national firms who would still stayed home with them. By coming
Hmm.
here, we're a lot more accessible. So it's great for individuals and small businesses, but even large organizations are saying, well, okay, let's try it. And we're getting some decent brands in the door. So it's, what's happening now with COVID-19 is you're having digital transformation kicked on us and forced upon us. And
Right.
it's a brilliant fire starter, because what's going to change now is people are going to say, well, why can't this always be like this? I know this isn't working from home as normally would be. We're all kind of stuck at the same time. But, for Clio, for other kind of cloud-based applications out there, this has got to be a great opportunity, because businesses are going to say, well, why are we spending all this money on these really large offices when we don't need it to the same
Yeah.
extent?
I think that's one of the lasting impacts we're going to see. And you think about how long it might have taken for this to play out organically in the marketplace. And I think it would have been on maybe the tens of years to get to a point where law firms thought that the norm was working from home and that we didn't
Yeah.
need these fancy AAA office spaces and expensive downtown cores. And all of a sudden we're there over the course of 10 days, and
Yeah.
it's incredible. And, maybe you can talk a little bit about the thesis behind the operating model for your firm. What was a view to accommodating what your partners at Tenet Law wanted to see from a work-life balance perspective with working from home, or was the motivation more toward finding some of those structural cost savings that you can realize thanks to not having a big expensive space downtown, or was it a bit of both? I'd be curious how the work model came to be.
Yeah, it's been a bit of an evolution. I mean, Tenet started probably because I had a chip on both shoulders. In a really big law firm, it got to the point that I should stress I left on good terms, but I felt that I could never do enough. You could never bring enough revenue in. You just were always having to run that bit further. And I was getting to the stage where you always also needed to feel like you were always present. If you weren't physically there, people didn't think you were doing as much, even if your billable hours were saying you were.
Right.
And as I got to 2015, when I started to think about this, my father wasn't very well. My kids were 2 and 6, and I was going to hospitals, and I was missing the kids, and I just thought there's got to be a different way. And so I thought about what are the things that frankly bugged me, which didn't work for me. And I thought, well, targets, I don't think you need them. If the work's there and people are diligent, they'll get on with it. I thought you can have people work from anywhere. there's no need to be in a central base. I know some clients like it, so have a smaller central base and we'll commute in if we want to. But ultimately, at the heart of it was, I wanted to be trusted, and I thought I want people to be trusted in my firm.
Mm-hmm.
And we just grew from that concept. It was at the heart of it is trust. It's, you don't need to be seen to be knowing that you're working. A lot of us in law firms go through this process that we train really hard at law school to be a lawyer, or we go through the training on the job, we get a training contract, we qualify. We're all trying to get to the top of the mountain, become a partner and get that title. And you get there and you find actually all you're doing now is management, and you're not being a lawyer anymore. And there are so many great lawyers out there who just want to be lawyers, and they just want to go back to basics. And I just thought, well, there's a framework for it here. If you just want to be a lawyer, you just want to get on with work. We just sold that vision. Let's put you first. Let's put the lawyers first. The work will get done, and it's just worked out. It's human innovation, but it's just, I'm an early adopter of Clio in Europe. I think I was like 2015, 2016. I started speaking to you guys and working with you. And I should do a shout out to some of the guys there. There's Carl Coleman, and there's Geraldine O'Reilly, and they are fantastic advocates for us. And they are, and they're amazing people you have working with you there and amongst the other team. And we, you come back to COVID-19. The only thing I don't like about COVID-19, apart from all the health and the general financial worries and all that, is we had a little secret going. We were doing quite well, saying, hey, you can do it this way.
Right.
This is fine. So if you talk about the transition, for us, it's been business as usual. We haven't had to worry about putting any staff on suspended leave or anything like that. We're just carrying on as normal. People are working from home. There's a few disruptions now we're seeing. You get this advent of digital presenteeism. I don't know if you've come across this. So
no.
What will happen now? You'll have people who are used to, someone will come over to their desk, have a chat, or there'll be people grouped around and huddled in an office talking. When you're all at home, there is still this concept that people want to show that they're present, they're doing their job, so that they're not in the hour. So you'd get the person who'd come into the office early and leave late. Well, now you'll just get them emailing you all the time, copying you into everything. And then if you imagine all your team do that, you suddenly end up with 200-300 emails a day, and you get this digital presenteeism. People want to prove they're doing something. And I think that's something we need to learn. If we're going to transition to this model to a semi-permanent world, a new age for digital, we have to manage expectations on our email communication. So it's back, you talked about human connectivity. People forget to pick up the phone. They'd rather send 5 emails. Just pick up the phone and chat it through.
Yeah.
To Microsoft Teams or something like that. And then we're going to see a different world. There should be a difference on costs and benefits for the consumer.
Yeah, you've made a bunch of interesting points there. I want to underscore. I think one, the term human innovation is one I haven't heard of before, but I love the term, and I think that so much of what law firms need to go through is both technical innovation, but the human innovation piece, I think, is something that even law firms that adopted cloud technologies and other technologies have an edge in this transition. But the human aspects of distributed work and work from home are an entirely different ball of wax. And many law firms had adopted cloud technologies, but still operated as a fairly traditional bricks and mortar law firm. And making this transition to distributed work and work from home, I think you used another term, I think that is exactly on point, which is trust. And you just need that trust. And I think if you have the proper trust, you actually see some of those behaviors, maybe like the digital presence piece, start to fall away.
Yeah.
But the challenge is, how do you measure productivity? How do you measure work product? And all of a sudden you don't have this easy thing, which is monitoring how many hours somebody's bum is in their chair per day. And you've got this much harder thing to quantify, which is, are they making the impacts that you expect them to in your organization? And that's really, if you think about it, the thing that we should be focusing on from the start. but it's a much harder thing to characterize. And I think where a lot of firms will struggle is on that human innovation piece, and how do they pivot to a model where they're measuring entirely different things from their team and expecting entirely different things, and managing in a different way, and you need to be managing against goals rather than managing against time, and managing against how many hours somebody's in a seat. So as you mentioned, you've been doing this before it was cool, so to speak, before a pandemic made it the norm for every law firm. What are some of your learnings on that human innovation piece? What are some of the things that have worked for you and your colleagues at Tenet Law in terms of being able to operate in this fully distributed environment?
Yeah, sure. So there's a few things. I think you talked about the goals and moving away from time. The main goal for us is the outlay, it's the product. It's delivering a work product to a client on time with the quality they expect. Then there's the issue. Then there's the issue about communication. I think it's really important to communicate with the clients to say, well, look, we are operating in a different way to what you may see as a traditional law firm. There is a leap of faith from them as much as there's a leap of faith from anyone joining this type of firm or this type of operation, because they need to understand that actually it can be done differently, but they get exactly the same result. And that communication is really important amongst the team. It's because you'll have this complex from people who join this firm where they want to work around picking up their kids from school, taking them to clubs, and then they might start work at 8 o'clock at night and work till 11 in the evening. They'll still get the same amount of work done in the day, but they'll be working at some slightly odd hours. And they feel that they are not delivering as much as someone who would work in a traditional way, 8 till 6, but they'll do the same hours. So you've got to manage people's expectations. I think a huge amount of this working is about communication and back to trust. I know it's repetitive. Trust from the clients, trust from your team that it can work this way. And that's it. It's ultimately, we're in a service industry, and our service is about delivering a product. Now, for us, it could be me advising an organization how to try and look out for a fraud in the COVID-19 area. And it could be about some policies around that. Or it could be a client who's discovered employees diverting money out of the business and they need to go and get an injunction at court. And at the end of the day, it's about getting the result. In many organizations, you have policies and procedures about how to do something, but it's actually about the destination. It's not about the journey. You get the destination right, most other things will fit into place. And that's the faith point. It's focused on what's your destination, and that's how your firm will grow. It doesn't have to be client work. It can be delivering a corporate social responsibility thing. Someone on the team started something with a local university to offer pro bono services, and we've explored that during these last 4 weeks. And that's great. They wouldn't have got onto that. It's again communication, trust, let people get on with things. Look at the destination.
Thinking a bit more broadly about your firm, how have you tried to offer stability to your firm members in this time of uncertainty, when people are, as you mentioned earlier, worried about their livelihood, worried about if we'll be able to keep the business and the firm going as usual? Do we have the right resource allocation and so on? Tell me how you're approaching that.
The first 2 weeks were, there's no escaping it. It was pretty stressful. I was getting a lot of advice. I got advice from accountants, some peers. There's probably similar over on your side of the pond. There's a system here where the government are offering grants to cover up to 80% of salaries of employees, and there is an easy option, and it's not repayable. It's an easy option to put a few employees on, effectively like temporary redundancy, and it's called furloughing. And accountants say to me, you should do that. You should do that. It's just gives you financial stability. And I went against it because what was most important to me about the team was making them all feel valuable and that they can all contribute in this time. And the worry was, if you take 2 or 3 out of a team and then you load their work onto the others, you're probably going to get some resentment from the others who are having to work harder to help keep the firm going. And you're going to leave the other three really nervous about their opportunities in the business later.
Yeah.
So we took a view that, look, let's, and I say it's weird, it's me standing at the helm looking and saying, I'm going to speak to everyone and explain how valuable they are. It doesn't have to be chargeable work. There are lots of things these guys can do. Let's spread the work. Let's give everyone some slack. Work with each other, spread the work around. Have some time with your family right now. You're never going to get this moment again where you're together so much, especially with young kids who are off school. And, fill your time with doing some other stuff. Don't worry about it. We've gone through a process. We'll go through 3 months. We break even 3 months. Great. If we do better than that, great. If we do a little bit worse, it's fine. But let's do it together. And I'm hoping at the other end of this, I'll have a team that is really collegiate, really together, and I think we can take on anything. Fingers crossed. I have no idea if I'm right or wrong. But
yeah. Well, look, I think that's a great way to approach the crisis, and I think it's in moments like this that true leadership can show through, and it's an interesting test, and we're seeing different organizations respond in such different ways. You obviously have the financial fortitude maybe to be able to make those kinds of moves as well. Can you tell us briefly how you've prepared financially to be able to weather some of these storms? There's many law firms that have a very small amount of runway if their cash flows or their incoming revenue stops, their cash flow goes sharply negative, and they just don't have a lot of cash on the balance sheet to burn if things go a little bit sideways. How have you prepared your firm to navigate this kind of a crisis, or maybe something that looks like it? I don't think anyone prepared their firm, if they're being honest, for this kind of a crisis, but maybe a crisis of a less severe variety. Are there things that you've done deliberately on that front?
Yeah, well, like everyone else, there's no way I could have predicted this. I've probably got lucky, to be honest. I took an approach with the business for these first 4 years: take out what we need, leave in what we don't, in terms of taking profit out of the business. And I've had two kind of financial management things I've done since day one, which is whenever we get an invoice paid, we put the money aside for all our tax liabilities and a bit extra. And we look, that sits in the account, we never touch it. It's just there. So we know we're good with HMRC, all the revenue.
Yeah.
Two, I've tried to get to a point that I said, let's build the firm up to a cash position where we could not build for 6 months and do nothing, and we'd be able to pay everyone. Because when I wanted to attract lawyers from national law firms, I wanted to give them stability. You don't go from a big firm to effectively a small startup trying to make a noise unless you can say, okay, there's some stability there. So you've got to demonstrate you've got some stability. So I thought part of that is I've got to say financially we're stable. So so we don't. So we've been lucky. I don't for 1 minute think it's so easy for everyone else. And I think if you are one of those firms where it's been difficult beforehand, well, that's actually why the government schemes are there. And this is, for us, the schemes of these grants and things like that are valuable to the business that actually need them. And there's an opportunity to do it, but you may not necessarily need it. And I think for us, it's holding true to your beliefs and what you do and shouting about what you do in the same way you've done before and stay true to it. Because I think people buy from people. And people buy honest stories, and people buy you telling the truth and not so much sales patter. And I think people will be surprised that, I think I heard one of the previous talks where you was talking about someone who's building up they had a retainer, and they asked to top up the retainer early with their clients.
Yeah, I think that was Erin Levine.
Yeah,
she talked about how willing her clients were to do that.
Absolutely. And I think reaching out to people and just saying, this is the situation I'm in, that they're obviously using you because you're good.
Yeah.
The chances are they'll want to still be using you. So they'll want to be a part of your journey to help you. So, okay, so we'll put some more money on account, bill us monthly rather than 3 monthly, do whatever. And I think it's being brave enough to believe in yourself to have those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's a super important point. And to your earlier comment around people are just a bit more human and compassionate than average, I think there's a huge amount of willingness uh, in lawyers' clients out there to lend a helping hand when they're in a position to do so, especially if you're doing it on the back of an already strong relationship. And I think Erin relayed that 100% of the clients she asked to top up the retainer early said no problem. Where do I
Amazing,
sign?
isn't it? Yeah.
That's really incredible. So Aaron, I'd love to talk next about just this transition to work from home and distributed work that, in fact, wasn't a transition for you at all. Maybe there's a transition to distributed work and working from home amidst a global pandemic and a much more charged atmosphere. But I'm curious, in midst of this crisis, have you seen shifts in how you're needing to deliver your services, maybe how you're interacting with your clients in particular that are being subjected to a whole new landscape? And then I'm also curious for any commentary you might have around your peer set and how you're seeing them manage this transition where maybe they're moving from a more traditional bricks and mortar and maybe an on-premise technology situation.
Yeah, I think we start with clients first. Yeah, the interesting thing from clients is that they've been far more accommodating to as they have to be right now to doing this, to having a Zoom conference call or going on a Teams call or something. But rather than, typically what would have happened before, you'd see them in person or you'd have a telephone call. And now pretty much the majority of the communications are through video. And what's really nice about it is there's this whole acceptance of just seeing you in your home environment. This is me for the day.
Yeah.
And they are themselves about that, where you get to actually, you just lose everyone's losing their mask a little bit. They're just dropping their guard a little bit and they're being themselves. And,
kids are popping in.
Oh yeah.
You're meeting people's families.
Yeah, exactly. You're hearing someone in the background, you're hearing, our two boys, one of them ripping the other one's head off after a while, but it makes it real. And I think that's been really good because it's kind of built relationships. And then in terms of certainly colleagues for us, in the firm has been, as I said, relatively the same as normal. But I've got quite a good peer group in the industry as well with the lawyers, and I think equally there's been, I think maybe week 1 or week 2, there's this reticence, there's this can't work, people won't do as much. It was almost as if people thought by having the opportunity to work from home, you're automatically going to take advantage of it and not work.
Right.
Everyone's been pleasantly surprised that, a lot of people have got a lot of pride in their work and they want to work.
Yeah.
Back to that trust word, doesn't it? And I think a lot of them are going, quietly, how do we tell people you can't work from home when we're allowed to go back to the office? How is that going to work for larger organizations where they demand people to be in the office? Well, actually, you could save 2 hours of travel, there's 2 hours of productivity, and they could get more work done, and you have less interruptions with people coming over. They're going to have to come up with a pretty good argument to say, no, you still have to come in. And I think that's the problem.
I heard a funny take on that saying, after we had so many webinars and companies had training sessions on how to work from home, on the other side of this, we're going to need a set of training sessions explaining how to work from an office, how to deal with the commute and the less reduced amount of time you've got to work during the day and the constant interruptions you have from people wandering by your desk and the noisy work environment you're in. And it was just a funny take where you realize, and to this trust word that we're falling back to, and I do think it so much orbits around lack of trust or existence of trust in terms of how we treat employees, is if you assume people are intrinsically motivated and care about the work they're doing, things will get done, whether it's from home or from the office. And you just need to think about how many obstacles are you creating to them getting
Absolutely.
their work done. And in many cases, those obstacles are actually reduced when you're in a work from home environment.
Yeah, they are. And we forget that, you know, I'm probably still institutionalized from a traditional law firm setup. That, you know,
Right.
I need to punch in and punch out, and I need to go. I've got to make sure I've got this many hours done, and actually, we're just worried about the product. We're just worried about, let's get this client, make sure the client's happy, because they're happy. Guess what? They pay. If they pay, we move along. The wheels are greased, and we move along. And yeah, it's getting people to understand that this is okay.
So I'm curious, Aaron, I'm going to ask you to make a prediction. When we get on the other side of this, whenever that is, you know,
Yeah.
probably at least a few months from now, if not longer. But when we get on the other side of this, will the average law firm revert back to its old way of doing things, or do you think this will have enduring change for the industry?
I think there will be enduring change, but I don't think it will be immediately, because sadly, most law firms are going to have some long leases on their property,
Right.
and they're going to need to justify being
And
where they
see
need to
those
be,
out.
see those out. But I think there'll be a real, when they've got that chance to move, they're going to look at this and say, well, this was um, an absolute perfect opportunity to learn and see how they could do it in a reduced overhead environment. So what I'm hoping I'll see is, apart from this kind of kick-starting of a digital transformation of firms moving into a more flexible working, is that they'll recognize that actually we're back to the benefits of the employee. You know, more time with the family, probably better. You know, we always, you know, there's so much about punching and hoping for this work-life balance. But I think businesses will start to realize that, and the future will start to realize that we lose too much dead time traveling, just a few hours in the office each day. And I'm hoping firms see that, because their productivity will probably go up.
Yeah.
Clients will be happier, employees will be happier, and they might actually be able to make their services more accessible. I think, you know, it's one of my bugbears, as I've said about our firm. I wanted to be more accessible, and that's not being ashamed about saying we want to be cheaper for offering the same service as a bigger firm. And I'm hoping I see more of that.
Yeah. Well, I think you will. And to your earlier comment and maybe lament, the secret's out now. People will hopefully see that there's actually a lot of advantages to this model. So I'd love to shift gears, Aaron, a little bit and talk about some of the other duties and responsibilities you have. You're the deputy chair and trustee of the fraud advisory panel in the UK. You also helped launch the COVID-19 Fraud Watch group. And I'm curious what you're seeing here. And from my perspective, I've seen a huge spike in phishing attempts, and it feels like crises like these draw the bad actors out in droves. And I'm curious to hear more about what this Fraud Watch group does, what fraud trends you're seeing overall over the course of the last month, especially, and is there any advice relating to fraud related advice that you would give both your clients and fellow legal professionals?
Yeah, sure. Well, so the Fraud Advisory Panel is a charity. It's a group of 250, 300 people who are all either are in this kind of counter fraud profession, helping to try and prevent fraud. And the chairman of the group was actually the reason for the COVID-19 kind of fraud watch group. So that's basically public and government sectors and private sectors coming together. So you'll have the likes of some large, you know, accountancy firms like PwC, and all types of sectors coming together and saying, look, you know, what are the risks we're seeing arising out of COVID-19? And you're right, because when there's a crisis, you know, when there is an event where people's attention is taken away, that's where the opportunists will come in.
Yeah.
So we, you know, in terms of fraud and things we're seeing right now, we're trying to educate other businesses on that. There's obviously a lot of cyber attacks. You talked about phishing. There's malware. There's get the latest government update, click on this link, you download some malware, you get people being tricked into making transactions to account numbers that don't belong to the party they're intending to pay. There's a lot of procurement fraud. So over in the UK here, some of the big issues at the moment are about physical protection for health workers. So masks, gowns and things of that nature. And there's a lot of supply fraud around that, people popping up pretending to be able to supply that.
Right.
Local authorities to pay money out and the money's not there. The goods aren't there. Investments, people's money is the Bank of England, the interest rates are down at 0.1%, and people think my money's standing still, those who've got savings, and saying, I've got a great opportunity for you, you fit that profile right now, we can turn that money in this investment scheme by up to 8% per annum. And you just have to, not many people know about this, and people are convinced. And if you're in an organization, even if you're an individual, the big things right now is that we have firewalls. You've seen the technology sector. You've got firewalls. You've got various protection. But so much about cybercrime is about getting through the human gateway. It's tricking people when their guard is down, when they're panicked. And I think if there's one message to fellow lawyers out there, other businesses, it's remind their employees just to take a moment. Just to take 5 minutes. If they see something which is asking them to take an action which isn't expected in their day, they click on a link, download open an attachment, make a payment which is not expected. Just have a look. Take your time, because we're being tricked into things by panicking, and that's where most of the fraud's happening right now. Yeah,
and I think even the fact that you're more distributed and working from home and you don't have some of the water cooler conversations that might help provide context around some of the requests, like a phishing scam, for example, that comes from your CEO asking you to wire funds to this account.
That's it.
When you're in person in the same office, you'd probably swing by the desk and say, hey, that seemed a bit unusual. Are you sure you want me to wire those funds? And the gig would be up. But when people are distributed, a little bit more physically distanced, I think this is the opportunity that so many fraudsters are jumping at. And I think the heightened awareness is so important. And that also translates to physical security. You've heard about a big spike in physical break-ins in the downtown cores that are way less traffic than they were a few months ago. And again, the bad actors are taking advantage of this situation.
If you couple it though with the fact that when everyone's working from home right now, they want to prove that they're quick, they're responsive, and so if they get that CEO email and they're at home and they're thinking, I just need to show I'm on it, I'm here.
That's it.
And they move a bit quicker, and they don't think where they would have done in the office, and that's the point. Just take a moment.
Exactly. Great tip. So Aaron, you and Tenant Law have been shortlisted and won many awards for innovation. What you've described over the course of the podcast, I think highlight so many places you're being innovative. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach innovation and any advice you might have for lawyers that are facing this crisis, that understand, at a first principles level, I've got to innovate to survive, but maybe they haven't had to because the status quo worked for their whole careers up until this point. How do you think about innovation, and what kind of mindsets or other approaches do you find to be useful when you're generating some of these innovative approaches to your law practice?
Yeah, I guess, our innovations developed by speaking to people who aren't in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I like to hang out with people who aren't lawyers, because you get a different perspective of, in terms of legal consumption of the product. What would make a difference? Us as lawyers, we think, hey, yeah, we know what you want. Well, actually, no, we don't know what you want. That's quite arrogant. We need to find out from our customers, what do they actually want? So you know, go and have conversations about, ask a client, you know, what can be done differently, but then look at other industries. Obviously, you know, digital and tech. There's always disruption. There's always efforts to disrupt the
Mhm.
market. Clio, great example, disrupting the market. Um, and I think it's important to go and read. You know, even it sounds silly, you can read a biography from someone who's been in a different industry.
Mhm.
You will suddenly start to draw your parallels. Say, actually, yeah, we could do that. And I think that's it. It's about expanding horizons. Because sometimes when you look at a problem, if you've only ever had one way of dealing with it, you're not going to think suddenly, oh, out of the blue, you're not going to suddenly go and say, hey, I've got a solution. It's not going
Right.
to happen. You've got to get inspiration from somewhere else. So get out of your industry, look what other people are doing in different areas, and think, okay, where's the parallel? What can we draw from that?
Yeah. No, I think it's a great piece of advice. And looking outside of legal, you'll often find analogs to industries that have solved similar problems, and they'll apply technology in new and innovative ways that you can crib from that playbook, and not necessarily invent everything from the ground up. I think it's um, a great approach, and there is so much to be learned. I even find in my own experience in building Clio so much inspiration for how we've built Clio, and approached solving the legal industry's challenges have come from looking at other industries and how they've approached things from a technical standpoint. So your perspective there resonates really deeply with me.
I think
Um,
there's, so I was saying, there's the one place you can look in your own industry though is look at your employees and say, what what would make their life better? You know,
right.
how you know, genuinely, you know, you're not going to get sacked. Tell me what would make your life better. And
Yeah.
people, you know, we had it with people saying, I'd like to pick up my kids and not be frowned on. I said, okay, let's make that happen. And that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And again, so much of how your employees are treated and where their headspace are at translate to your clients and your customers as well. And if you get things with your employees right, so much flows from that.
Yeah. Very hard
Hardly
bits.
hardly agree with you on that one, Aaron. And you know, maybe to wrap up, our conversation has flown by here. Want to ask you a couple of final questions. The first being, um, I think from reading your blog posts and articles on LinkedIn, you seem to be a fan of Simon Sinek, a shared
Yeah.
passion. I love Simon's writing. In fact, I've been uh, chasing after him to try to get him to speak at the Clio Cloud conference
Oh, wow.
for a few years now, and so far no luck. He's very selective about where he speaks, and is, I think, busy constantly writing books as well. So some years he's just said, I'm flat out not doing public speaking, but really like his work. Why is one of the books that's really influenced my thinking around motivating people and so on. And I'd be curious uh, your perspective on why you find Simon so compelling, and maybe how some of his thoughts have influenced the way that you're leading your firm through the tough times like these.
Yeah. I mean, the guy's, he's a bit of inspiration for me. I stumbled across the TED talk for Start With Why when I was doing my business plan, setting up the firm,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole concept just hit home with me about, it's, you know, why do people want to work in a law firm, or, you know, in this law firm now? You know, I think it's, I wanted to, and that made me think really hard. And they wanted to. It sounds quite cheesy, quite crazy, but they wanted to be better versions of themselves,
Yep.
um, better at home, better at work, and that led to saying, what are the barriers to entry? What's stopping that? So that Start With Why I'm focusing on people first, your people first, then your product, and the profit will follow. That kind of came from Start With Why, and then Leaders Eat Last came next, and there's something in that book, which I'm pretty sure it's that book, where he says, "Would you sacrifice the people for the people for the numbers, or the numbers for the people?" And right now in COVID-19, if I'm leading through any line at all out of anything he's written, it's that I would sacrifice, genuinely hand on heart, would sacrifice the numbers for the people, because I think it'll pay back in spades.
Yeah.
I mean, I was lucky enough. I got to see him at a conference last year, and he's very compelling. And I think he sets out this idea of having a tribe, this collective spirit. That when I talked earlier about wanting to keep us all on board and going together, that's all driven by him. I wish I could say I was coming up with some original ideas. I'm Mr. Plagiarist for taking all his ideas and just putting it into a law firm. But I think he says it as employees probably want to hear it, and then they want their leaders to deliver it. And I think we should be honored to be able to lead people as opposed to be proud of, hey, I've got this many people doing what I say. And
right.
I've just tried to stay true to it, and it seems to work. So I'm not going to, hey, it ain't broke, so I'm not going to try and fix it.
Yeah, exactly. No, he has so many useful thoughts on so many different aspects of leading and motivation and so on. I think he's, to your point around looking outside legal and looking at writing that's done outside of legal, I think Simon is a great place for our listeners to start if they're looking for some of that outside the box thinking that might prove inspirational.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, definitely recommend reading all those books and going from there.
Check out his TED Talk as well. There's a great 15-minute TED Talk he does on I think some of the foundational ideas to start with why as well.
Yeah.
So Aaron, final question. Would like to just leave it on a note, asking you what your main message is to our listeners, speaking to them either as legal professionals or just as human beings.
Wow, that's deep.
It is deep.
Honestly, okay. Believe in yourself. Right now, whatever's got you to where you are, it's you. Believe in yourself, because that's what's going to bring you through this, and staying true to yourself. And see, for all the difficulties this pandemic's bringing, see the opportunities and grasp them. All time to do something, work or not work, grasp it and enjoy it, because we don't want to turn around with regret. And so, yeah, believe in yourself, take the opportunity, stay positive.
Love it. That's a great note to end on. Well, Aaron, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for staying up late there in the UK to have this conversation with us. And humbled. Stay healthy. Really great having this conversation with you.
I'm really humble you asked me. It's really kind of you. And you stay safe and healthy, and same to everyone at Clio. Thanks again.
Thanks for joining us on Daily Matters today, a podcast from Clio. Rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Daily Matters is produced by Andrew Booth, Sam Rosenthal, and Derek Bolin, and hosted by yours truly, Jack Newton. Thanks also to Clio, the world's leading cloud-based legal technology provider, for supporting this podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Clio, please visit clio.com.